7-foot spinning rod. Probably already have bait casting set up. This got a good, nice, soft tip, so you can get on there. Of course, the bigger one, the heavier the weight. My EWG hooks, as you can see, Zara Spook, a square bill crankbait, a buzz bait. We have jigs, a popper, spinnerbait, one of the most, your lipless crankbait, a hollow-bodied frog, deep diving crankbait, jerkbait. Hey, what's up guys? Nick the Informative Fisherman here, and today we're going to go over an introduction to bass fishing. Oftentimes I bring new friends out that venture in other types of angling and never bass fished before, so I thought, what is the most simple methods to get them started to where they don't have to purchase a bunch of gear? They can take gear they already have at home and really just utilize it, or pick up one bait casting rod and reel setup, you know, get out there and get on them. And when I say bass fishing, the primary competitive bass that we fish for are largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, and spotted bass. I live on the California Delta, that's where we're here today. So primarily in my area, I only have largemouth bass. So we're gonna be going over that. More than likely, you already have a spinning rod. What this is a medium light spinning rod right here, a 7-foot spinning rod. Now, what I use these guys for is finesse fishing, and all finesse fishing means in bass fishing is using light line, little hooks, little tiny drop shot weights. This is 8-pound fluorocarbon line. When you get started on your spinning rod bass fishing, kind of focus on just this being your finesse setup. You don't have to use fluorocarbon in the beginning. Fluorocarbon is very dense, very sensitive, but it's a little harder to work with. What I would suggest is like a good copolymer line, like the P-Line CX Premium in 8-pound when you're first getting started. And then if you get a little bit more grass in your lake, you can move up to 10, but I'm going to suggest getting started off with 8-pound CX Premium. It's a low stretch, it's a thin diameter, good line for you to drop shot with, which is this rig here, where you put that worm on that hook and we bounce it up and down. If you want to watch my drop shot video, which I definitely suggest you do, click this link right here on the bottom. You'll learn all about it. So that's your spinning setup right there. What I prefer for your action is a fast. That means bending right up here in the tip, has a decent amount of backbone right here, but bends right up here in the tip. What this is going to do, it's going to give you good cast control, good sensitivity, and that 7-foot length is going to get you a lot of leverage over the top of the fish. You always want to make sure you have your drag set to the proper amount of tension to where you're not going to break that line. So that's your spinning rod. I use this one for finesse wacky rigging and drop shotting, and pretty much nothing else. There's a few exceptions in bass fishing that are more advanced, but we're not going to dabble into that right now. We're going over an introduction, so drop shotting and wacky rigging finessing. If I cut off this weight right here, and it was just this hook, and I'll do that to show you exactly what I'm talking about. So I cut off that, and I'm going to pick up a Zoom trick worm. This is what I drop shot with when I have beginners on my boat. This is what I wacky rig with for beginners on my boat, the Zoom trick worm. The two colors that are extremely popular are black with red flake or watermelon. Watermelon's probably the #1 color for all plastics out there. And that's your wacky rig right there. Falls through the water, extremely light. Watch the link I'm going to put right here at the bottom of the screen, and then come back to this video. That's an expert level of wacky rigging, so you'll learn how to utilize that. And this is both on a spinning outfit you probably already have. You'll know how to drop shot, and you'll know how to wacky rig with that identical line. And all this right here, this hook that we're using for drop shotting and wacky rigging, is a 1/0 mosquito hook. You can use a size 1 or a 1/0 when first getting started. I prefer the little bit bigger hook so you don't have to lose too many fish. When you do hook them, they're pretty much going to stay pegged on there. If you're using fluorocarbon, use an improved clinch knot, and I'll put up this illustration here. That's the improved clinch knot. If you're using a copolymer like the CX Premium I told you, you can use the Palomar knot, which will be this illustration here. Now let's get into our bait casting gear. Now when it comes to our first bait casting setup, this is where a lot of guys, they either get too big or too light. Now in bass fishing, each rod and reel is specialized to that particular technique we're gonna do. Now when you're first getting started, you don't want to go out and spend $2,000 to $3,000 on rods and reels. And if you do, good for you, and check out some of my other videos, you'll pick up some techniques for that. But when you're first getting started, what I suggest is a 6 foot 6 inch rod or a 7 foot rod. If you're on the taller side, go with the 7 foot. If you're on the shorter side, go with 6 foot 6. It's going to be a little easier for you to work with. That same action is that fast. It's spinning right up here near the tip, but it's got a good, nice, soft tip, so you can get some good accuracy to your casts. It's got a lot of backbone. Now, where the advantage is for bait casting is the pressure is against the rod blank. When the fish pulls, he pulls down against those eyes, and it's against the blank, versus your spinning rod, he pulls against the eyes, which is a lot more lighter, sensitive. That's for those finesse techniques. But now with this guy, what we're going to be teaching you is the wacky rig with a bigger hook on a Senko or any chopstick style bait. Need it be a Ninja stick or a Bass Pro Shop Sticko. This is a 5 3/4. This is what I often use when people first get in the boat. If you want a little bit more bites, go with a 4 inch. If you want a little bit bigger fish, go with the 5 3/4 or 5 or 6. All around that range is going to get you a bigger bite. We're going to use a bigger hook. We're going to put this on our bait casting outfit here. Now right here, what I have on here is P-Line CXX Clear, which is another copolymer line. It's extremely strong, has low stretch, stuff's tough as nails. I can yank fish out of heavy cover really easy. I'm throwing in this heavier worm. It's a little bit harder to get started on your bait caster than it is for your spinning rod casting. If you don't know how to use a bait casting reel, click on the link right here at the bottom of the video. I'll explain how to do that. And come right back to this film, and then you'll know exactly what we're doing there. With this worm in today's film, we're going to be wacky rigging it, and it's a little too heavy to be drop shotting. And some guys will use heavy gear and do it, but this is not the preferred drop shot worm. Trust me on that. Probably the #1 drop shot worm in the world is the Skinny Worm by RoboWorm. So if you want to venture more into that. But we're going to be wacky rigging this guy, which means hooking it right in the middle. And you've seen that wacky rig video link I put up earlier. And we're going to be Texas rigging that. And all that means is rigging it up weedless. So click right here on this link for how to rig soft plastics. And I'll teach you the Texas rig, the wacky rig, the Nico rig, and you'll have it all covered, and you'll see exactly how we're utilizing that today. For my bait casting outfit right here, when I'm first suggesting people get started, I used to suggest 12-pound line, but people had the tendency of thinking they could just hoist the fish as hard as they want. They tighten down their drag all the way. They're not utilizing their drag. So start with 15. I say 15 pounds, CXX P-Line in the clear. It's extremely strong. You're not going to break it. If you're fishing the Delta like I am, and you're going out with your buddies, and trust me, we fish the thickest of stuff out here, fish the 17 or 20. A little bit harder to work with. You're not going to get the range on casts, but it's going to be tough as nails, and you're not going to break off fish that way. So 15 on your regular lakes. If you want to venture down, if you have smaller fish on average, you can go all the way down to 12, but I'm going to suggest 15 so you don't end up losing a fish and blaming me for it. I'm just kidding. The reel you want is a 6 to 3 speed. A 6 to 3 in a bait casting reel is a medium speed. You have 5s, you have 6s, you have 7s, and now you have them even faster than that. But a 6 to 3, what this is going to allow you to do over time is utilize it for all the different types of lures. Certain lures have a lot of resistance against them, and you want a slower speed. Generally, the slower speed is a stronger drag. The faster the speed, the less the drag, but the higher the speed number. If it's a 6 to 1, if I take 1 revolution of the reel handle, that spool turns around 6 times for 1 revolution. So you're going to pick up line faster the higher number you go to. That doesn't mean you're going to bring the fish in faster. All it means is if I make a cast out there and I want to pick up and cast there, I can pick it up a lot faster and get right back over to that spot. So I say a 6'6" or a 7-foot medium heavy bait casting rod in a fast or moderate fast action. This iRod right here that I'm fishing is a great setup. This model is the IRG 744C in the medium heavy. My buddy Matt Newman makes the iRods. Incredible rod designer, guys. Doesn't get much better than that. And so let's venture into a few more things here for you. So what I have right here is a 4/0 EWG hook. EWG means extra wide gap. That's a big gap right there. It's an offset Aberdeen hook. That's not so important, but if you want to learn more about hooks, check out this link I'm going to put right here on the bottom. I'll teach you all about the hooks as well. Now, what we have the option here is we can either wacky rig this Sticko, and that's going to fall in like this, and it's going to fall slower to the cover. Or if we have a lot of twigs, a lot of branches around, what we could do is Texas rig it. And if you, once again, you want to know these videos, make sure you go back and watch my how to rig plastics video. And I'm going to rig that right back into the worm. And we're going to stick them right in there. And that is Texas rigged there. If we wanted it to fall faster, we put a little bullet weight right up here on the line. I'll go over the weights with you shortly, but let me show you. Bass are structure and cover oriented species. This means they're gonna hold tight to structure and cover. So a lot of the times out in the middle of open water, you're not gonna find them. Let's just ignore the open water for now if you're just getting started into bass fishing and focus primarily on the bank. We're going to look for structure and cover along the bank. So why don't you come with me over here and let's take a look. Now you can see these toolies along the bank right here. You see how they go down, and you'll see a little dark line in the water below them. What that is the grass line, the weed line. So you can see that there's a lot of grass in there. So I don't really want a wacky rig here with an exposed hook. So instead I did that Texas rig so we could throw it right up in there. Now I'm going to show you a common mistake that I see a lot of beginners make. They line up to the bank, they're going right down parallel with it, and they're throwing straight in. Now here's the thing. I'm in the strike zone right now, but as soon as I get it out away from that grass line, now I'm away from that cover. That covers the vegetation, the structures like the rocks, the big giant humps, the big points that would go elongated out into the water there, and the cover stuff that, you know, could dissipate, it can die, it can float away. So that's just something to keep in mind. Structure, boat ramps, solid objects cover the plant life, in case you ever get that confused. But what we really want to do is throw it a 45 to 65 degree angle down the bank. So I'm going to step around this way. Let's look over here. Now you can see when I make a cast, now my line's coming very close to that structure and cover the whole time. So when I retrieve it, it's staying near the objects that the bass are in. So therefore, I just greatly increase my strike zone and the odds of me getting a bite from a bass instead of throwing 90 degrees at the bank the whole time.
Stay with us, guys. When we come back, it'll be back to more bassin'. Did you know that P-Line makes specialized lines for all your fishing needs? From the super strong abrasive resistant CXX or the low stretch super stealthy CX Premium, or maybe you're looking for invisibility or super bite detection with P-Line's 100% fluorocarbon. No matter what your needs, P-Line's got it covered. To find out more, visit P-Line.com.
P-Line, baby!
Are you ready for a pair of polarized sunglasses that's going to improve on your fishing game? Well, Bluefin Eyewear's addressed all the current issues with fishing glasses. No more pressure, discomfort behind the ears, they're super lightweight with improved face gripping technology, and not to mention a lifetime warranty. BluefinEyewear.com, guys. Check it out. Ever tried pulling a planer board next to your boat when trolling or fishing from a swift current bank? If not, you're missing out on one of the most phenomenal fish catching machines on the market today. With Yellowbird planer boards pulling your lines perpendicular to your boat, you can't help but catch more fish. Find out more by visiting www.yellowbirdproducts.com. Have you been to RustyLures.com? Did you know they offer free shipping on anything over $29.99? And with all the latest and greatest in bass fishing gear, from punching tackle, umbrella rigs, swim baits, and you name it, there's really no reason for you not to be getting the best deal online today. So go to www.RustyLures.com. Did you ever wish for an RC boat when you were a kid? And do you have a passion for fishing? Well, guess what? It's time to do them both at the same time. With RCFishingWorld.com's RC Fishing Pole, it's time to be a kid again. So visit www.rcfishingworld.com today. Did you know that Bass Angler Magazine has more articles than any other bass fishing publication? And with the top pros from around the nation spilling the beans in every issue, there's really no reason for you not to be subscribed to the most informative bass fishing magazine there is, Bass Angler Magazine. Thanks for watching, guys. Now let's get back to the show.
Now here's one on a wacky rig. Little guy. Not getting much from the way of size today. This is a double wacky hook, but it's still basically the same wacky rig that I teach in the video. There's that. A lot of the time when you're holding these bass, guys have a tendency of arcing the fish up like that, but they hold it with one hand and they don't have a support hand. That actually damages the fish's jaw, and it can prevent them from eating for a long time and negatively affect the survival rating when you let them go. So when you hold a bass, always hold them like this. If you want to hold them sideways for a picture, get your hand under them and lift them up like that. But don't arc his jaw back and crank him over like that. You will let him go. Basically, you want their nose to hit the water first, tilt them over, nose hits the water, they get a good source of energy in them and shoot right off. A lot of the time, if you hold them out of the water for over 30 seconds, you want to sit them down in the water, slowly move them back and forth till you feel them start biting down on your thumb, then release them, because they get into a real state of shock, and the chance of them surviving, once you let them go at that point, greatly diminishes. So either take them off, get them back in quick, throw them in nose first, shock them back into recovering, or hold them down in the water till you feel them bite down on your thumb or you see their tail start kicking, and then let them go at that point. So let's take that Texas rig worm off and go over to a wacky rig. And we're still going to do it with our EWG hook. We're not going to use a specialized hook for it. It'll still get the job done. It's not the perfect hook, but it'll definitely get the job done, and it'll help you be more versatile on the water. Now, a common term that we use in bass fishing is chucking and winding. And all that means is you make your cast and you just retrieve it in. Now, when you're dealing with a straight worm or a wacky rig like this, you cannot chuck and wind. It doesn't work. I'll show you what happens when I throw this in the water and I just retrieve it. It does not look very appealing at all. The trick with the wacky rig is we want to throw it out there and we want to let it fall vertically right next to that cover, real slow. And what else does a worm do, or a grub, when it falls out of a tree into the water? When it hits, it twitches. So occasionally we can pop our rod tip like this and give it slack again and let it get down to the bottom. We don't want to cast it out there and reel it in. We don't want to chuck and wind like this. We could do that a little bit with our drop shot, but we want to make sure our weight's touching the bottom the whole time. So when I'm done, I pick it up and I can cast again. Another common thing in bass fishing you're going to see us do, we have, a variety of casting: the big overhand cast, the sidearm cast, but one of the most popular methods nowadays is flipping and pitching. This is a pitch, an underhand little toss like that. Now, I have a full-on elaborate video on how to become an expert at flipping and pitching. I've won multiple big contests for flipping and pitching contests. So watch my episode link right here at the bottom, then come back to this video again, and you'll know exactly how to flip and pitch. You'll know how to use your bait caster, and you can get out there. And the opposite stands true. Here's your flip. We bring it back in, we pendulum it out, and let it go. You can learn these techniques. Now, the benefit about flipping and pitching is this can enter the water way more quiet and stealthy than a big overhand splash. So you need to know how to flip and pitch when you're bass fishing. A lot of the time, we're going to pull up to one of those banks that has a big tree hanging over the water, and if you can't throw under it like that, if you can't do that pitch, that real low pitch, you won't be able to cast into that shady spot where that bass live. They love to sit in that shade, wait for something to cruise by, bam, and nail it right at that point. So you have to learn your flipping and pitching. Okay, so now I pulled out my drop shot rig. I'm pulling out to this point here, and I'm going to show you in a second. There's sun right in our face, so it'd be hard to see, but there's a rock jetty that sticks out about 40 to 50 foot out in the water, and the water's up over the top of it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw the drop shot rig on there and slowly shake it and drag it over the top of those rocks to try to find an active fish right in there. So let's take this guy out and see if we can get one in the boat. Now with my drop shot, oh, there's a hit already. With my drop shot, you always kind of want to maintain a tight line and just give it a little bit of shake like that. Oh, missed him. He was on it. Little tiny guy. Just a nice tight little shake like that. It's pretty much all you need. I'm going to get it back out there. Get it back out to the spot where he just hit me. Okay, so we're hooked up on the drop shot. Feels like a pretty decent fish. I have my drag loose because this is 8-pound fluorocarbon, but it feels pretty good. It's right down here. Let's see what we got. Just slowly shaking that drop shot over the top of the rock piles. I'm gonna shut the motor off. Ah, a little 1.5, 2-pounder. About 1.5. Not bad. Maybe one. He's getting smaller as we go. Yeah, little one. Not bad. But you can see that little mosquito hook right there. Ooh, just barely. Oh no, looked like it barely had him, but that point's right there with that barb. But pretty decent fish for the first one in the morning, pulling up on those corners, long rock pile out there and picking up the drop shot rig. This will work anywhere you go, guys. Any lake, any river system, the drop shot is deadly effective. It's affordable. You probably already have that spinning rod, so you can get out there and start utilizing this technique. Now for our Texas rig, a lot of the time we want to add weight. We have thin grass, we need to get down there. So in front of that Texas rig, we're gonna slide our line right through this little bullet weight here and put that on there. Of course, the bigger one, the heavier the weight. Adjust to how much weight you need to get it down through that grass. You always wanna use as light as you can possibly get away with, but if it's not getting down through that grass or you're not feeling the bottom, go up a little bit more in your weight and drop down there. So get a variety of your bullet weights, just like that. Now for our drop shotting, this is a drop shot weight. You see that little crimp right there on the top of this thing? What you do is you put your line through there and you grab it and you crimp it back and it'll hold right onto there. This is a 3/16 ounce. This is a little bit on the heavier side, but it's gonna help you detect the bottom a little bit better to make sure you're touching down there, you're not hung up on anything. You'll feel it as you pick it up and down with your rod like that. You'll detect that bottom a whole lot better. These come in little balls as well with those little crimp on top, but this is just like a little stick style right here. This is what I like. I find that I don't get hung up nearly as often. But those are the two weights you're gonna have to use a lot. It's your little bullet weights and your little drop shot weights for these techniques we're gonna be going over today. Now for my EWG hooks, as you can see right here, I have a 5 or a 6/0 right here, a big one, down to a 4, down to a 2. You can see the diameter difference. If I have this on a heavy rod, I could potentially bend this out. So in theory, I could do that Texas rig with like a Zoom trick worm on my lighter gear if I wanted to do a finesse Texas rig and drag that on the bottom, a smaller worm, so I'm looking for more bites, not necessarily bigger fish. And each one of these is gonna match the profile as your bait as you start venturing out into like crawdad style baits or big creature baits and bigger worms. You're gonna have to start matching these up to your worm. So you're gonna get bigger and bigger and bigger. So I would start with a 2, 4, and 5s. And you're gonna find that those work and cover your areas, you know, a good variety of your baits at that point. Another dink. A lot of the time this is what you're getting when you're drop shotting. Little tiny fish. This is about as finesse techniques go. But basically finesse, all that means is tiny baits, tiny hooks, light line, and that's often going to translate into more bites, but it could mean more bites by that guy right there. Let me get him back in the water. So with the two worms that we spoke of, the Zoom trick worm and the Senko or Bass Pro Shop Sticko or any other chopstick style worm that you want to use, that variation, so the regular drop shot is just going through the nose hook like I showed in the video, just like that, to where it goes back and forth, moves naturally on there. A lot of guys will go right and bury it into the tip of the worm like that and give it a little bit more action. But you can also wacky rig. You know, it's just the way you go through the hook right through the middle of the egg bladder, just like so. So now I'm wacky rigged on this drop shot. So we're still up to this big rock jetty here. And I'm gonna flick out this wacky rig, see if we can pull one off like this for you. There we go, so we hooked up on the wacky drop shot. Wow, what a runner. Oh, we got a decent fish here. There we go. Try to keep him up out of the grass. You just realized he was hooked, fighting him on this light line. It looks like got a striper. I seen a lot of chrome in this. Uh-oh, going. Shut off the motor. Yeah, it's a bass, a couple pounder, not bad. Fighting them on these lighter setups, you really gotta take your time with them. There we go. Not bad. It's about 2 1/4, a little bit better for today. Bite's been really tough. We'll try to get us away from this rock jetty here a little bit. Hang on a sec. So we've been seeing them bust on some minnows over there. So I took that wacky trick worm, drop shotted, and if I wanted to just go wacky, I could cut it off right there and cut the weight off and just go wacky and, you know, move down the bank and keep pitching it up to toolies and letting it fall real slow. But since I'm working a deep rock jetty that sticks out here, I wanted that wacky rig on the drop shot so I can get down there and keep it close to those rocks where those bass are sitting ambushing bait. And sure enough, that did it. This guy wasn't going nowhere. Let's get him a little juice. See him biting my thumb right there and kicking? Look at that. So he's ready to go. So I send him on his way. There he goes. Here's a common question I always get. Guys say, oh, I went out to my favorite spots today. I went there from 11 to noon. I didn't catch anything. They're just not biting today. Well, you have to look at it this way. If I was hanging out in your spot and I showed up to your spot and you didn't know I was there, I was down there camouflaged in the bushes, and I just ate 2 whoppers and you threw a plug in front of my face, unless I just smacked it because I was irritated, aka reaction strike, and we'll get into that later, I'm not going to eat it. You throw something there, I'm full. I don't want it. A lot of the time you have to re-hit those prime areas, things that look good to you, like a tree laying down in the water, boat docks. What you want to do is you don't want to spend the whole day fishing one tree. You want to fish it for a good 20-30 minutes if you're fishing from the bank and move on. If you're in a boat, it shouldn't take you but, I don't know, less than 10 minutes to clear a big tree. You're going to cast to each spot with 1 or 2 different presentations that are the opposite to see if maybe they just didn't want what you were presenting the first time. So you can show them a different presentation, a bigger worm, a smaller worm, a wacky rig, a drop shot down there around the bottom. If they don't want it, come back a couple hours later. If it looks prime, if it's a big, pretty laydown tree, bass do live there. If they just didn't want to eat for you at that time, needed to be that the sky was blue and they felt like it was going to be too much of a challenge for them to eat the bait, or they just ate a fat bluegill and they looked at your bait and was like, oh no man, I don't want to eat that. So you have to periodically come back to those prime spots and hit them throughout the day. That's a big mistake I see a lot of new anglers making, is they fish it for a little bit and they never come back. A lot of professional bass anglers, they have their prime areas, but you're going to see them recycle through there all throughout the day. They're hitting it in the morning, the afternoon, and the evening. And what oftentimes they'll pull a big fish off one of those spots, another big fish will move in there, and they call that reloading. And that's going to get you a lot more bites, guys. So now I'm going to give you a quick run through of some hard baits. We're not going to be fishing them today. They're not all as versatile as your plastics, your wacky rigs, your drop shots, your Texas rigging. They're not that versatile. That's why I want you guys to focus on that as an interlude, as an introduction to bass fishing. But what I'm going to do is show you some hard baits now, tell you kind of the situation they're used for, in case you do want to venture into it, you get a little bit bored going the other direction, but I still suggest you learn those other techniques first. First things first, we have a topwater plug. This is a Zara Spook. This is a big bait with 3 treble hooks on it. These are good for low light or basically the fall or early summer mornings. Windy island points, you can work those around. You want to do a walk the dog retrieve, you can check out my how to select a lure video. I teach you the proper cast and retrieve methods right at the end of that video. That'll be at this link right here on the bottom. Here we have a square bill crankbait. This is a KVD 1.5. What a crankbait is a bait that when you reel it, it goes down and it digs down under the water. It gets down there. According to how big the lip is on this crankbait is how deep it'll go. The style of the lips on there, see how that's a square on the end? Square bills they have a more erratic movement than a round bill, and they deflect off objects better. They don't roll to the side when they hit an object. They deflect straight up and come back over. So it's more of a weedless setup, or if you're fishing timber or rocks and you don't want to get hung up, the square bill is a good choice for you there. From there, we have another topwater. This is a buzz bait. You see these big props on here? You throw this guy out and you burn it in. It's squeaking the whole time. It's good in low light conditions. Some guys will throw a white one in the middle of the day and still catch big fish. You don't catch a lot of fish, but you irritate big fish into striking. For some reason, the big females get irritated by buzz baits and they come up and crush these, but they're not a high frequency bait, so keep that in mind. If you're gonna throw a buzz bait, expect a big bite, but expect to commit to it all day long. From here we have jigs. These are these little weighted lead heads with a hook right in the middle, and a weed guard on it. Each jig is designed a little bit differently. They have big flat heads, wider heads, pointed heads, either to come through the grass better, to sit on the bottom better, to where it doesn't tip side to side. Some of them are shaped like footballs for dragging on the bottom. They drag just like this with the hook open. You could stick a plastic on here, a trailer that looks like a crawfish or whatever you want to put on there, and drag it across the bottom. That hook will stay upright. It comes through the wood really well. Very weedless setup. The jig's been around for years and they've caught tons of big fish. The average fish on jigs are bigger. You're not going to catch as many as you would on, you know, little finesse worms like that Zoom trick worm, but you will catch bigger fish on the jig, so keep that in mind. Now here we have another topwater lure. This is a popper. All poppers are for is when the water's really calm. You don't want rough water when you're fishing a popper. You want calm water in a little cove. You throw it up in there and you jerk it, doom, 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 and you let it sit. And you see this hair, this feather here on this tail? When it sits back, when they're wet, it gives a really slow moving natural motion. And a lot of the time you could sit this still after chugging it a couple times for over a minute and a bass will still come up and boom, eat that thing out of nowhere. Really small treble hook, so you want a limber rod when you're using these. You can't have a stiffer rod, but it's a time of year thing. Fall poppers are great. Calm early mornings and evenings, poppers are great. Spinnerbait, one of the most versatile hard baits of all time. You can see this wire frame on here and the hooks right here inside the skirt. The nice thing about this is, as long as it's moving, this deflects around timber and things to where the hooks actually are quite weedless, and it comes through grass at the same time extremely well. You can control the depth depending on how fast you retrieve it. The blades, these are willow leaf blades. They look like willow leaves. They have Indiana blades, which are kind of a cross between a round blade and a willow leaf, and then they have Colorados, which are more your round ones. The bigger, rounder ones make more noise for dirtier water if you want to pull in fish from further away. They can't see it. The willow leaves are more narrow, that you can retrieve the bait faster and it'll stay lower. The bigger the blade, the faster you retrieve, the more towards the surface it's going to hold. So, and depending on the color of those blades makes a huge difference too. Low overcast gold is great. Clear water, your chrome nickel finishes are great. And a lot of the time in real muddy water, guys will use those painted finishes. But the spinnerbait is very versatile. You can see that this one's white right here with a lot of chrome. This is to match your shad. I live here on the Delta, a lot of threadfin shad at the river right now. And in the fall, there's going to be even more that the bass are feeding on. Great presentation to match those. You can get them in different weights for how fast you want to fish them and how deep you want to fish them. It's just going to make it a little bit easier for you. But that's your spinnerbait. Now you have your lipless crankbait. It's a crankbait, but like the name says, lipless. There is no lip on here. This guy is designed for getting down in the top edges of the grasses and ripping them free. And they got a ton of rattles in there. They make a ton of commotion. This is a Livingston lure one. This one actually, I think, makes croaking noises and the eyes glow red when you put it underwater. Pretty cool concept. Something the fish haven't seen before. They tend to always strike something a little bit more often that they're not conditioned to. I have this red right here in a crawdad pattern. Depending on how fast you retrieve this guy, you can yo-yo it up and down with your rod and rip it free of the grass. You can chuck and wind like we went over and burn it. But what you really want to do is hook the tops of that grass and rip it free. And that's going to cause a reaction strike for those fish that are already full. Remember, they already ate the hamburger. You went through your spot. You offered them a French fry. They didn't want it. Now this time you went up and you slapped them upside the head with this guy. They got irritated by it. Here we have a hollow-bodied frog. This is a river to sea right here frog. This is a chugging and popping one. I forget the exact name for this guy, so I'm sure someone will correct me on this. But you jerk it down and you chug. You see this body right here? When you squeeze down, see how those hooks are exposed? You could throw this right up on the thickest of snot and mat and right up in grass and blunk, blunk, blunk. In the middle of a sunny day when the bass hide under that stuff for shelter, you can throw this up there, boom, 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 irritate them. They'll come up through the mat, boom, engulf that thing. And usually when you hook up on a frog, you got a fat fish. You're not expecting a ton of bites, but you're expecting really quality bites. This is where you would want to use 50 to 65 pound braid and a heavy rod. Those two beginner setups are really not going to do the trick for you if there's a lot of grass around. If you're fishing open water, you can get away with it. And even if you just want to get that big smash and you might end up breaking off the fish and you want to have a good time, try the frog. From there we have a deep diving crankbait. Look at the size of this lip. This guy's going to get down 15 to 20 some odd feet. when the bass move down deep in the middle of the summer on those deep ledges or points, you can see a point sticking off, you know, out in the middle of the main lake. You can see fish on your fish finder. You see those arches, and you see that it's 15, 20 feet. Bomb this guy out there as far as you can. Crank it down there. When you look at that big lip, it deflects off of that cover. Boom, boom, boom. The lip's so long, these hooks really don't get fouled up. You can smack rocks down there deep, get that reaction strike. They love big crankbaits in the middle of the summer. Now we have a jerkbait. Now a jerkbait is basically a cold water bait. Some guys will fish them when it's warm out, but jerkbaits can excel in the pre-spawn phases. I do really well on them too in the fall too, when the water's not necessarily too cold yet. The reason why is you can cast these out and you can twitch, twitch, and this is a suspender right here. This sits down under the water about 2.5, 3 foot deep. So I could twitch, twitch, and stop it, and when they come up to it, it's not floating up to the surface, it's right there in their face, and they can't resist, and they smack it. Another advantage to these excelling in that cold water is when it sits still, you give that bass the opportunity to take it. If he sees too fast of a presentation and he's still cold, he says, no, I don't want to commit to it. But by jerk, jerk, and pausing it, you give them that time to commit, and they can't resist, and they'll come out and smack it. And that's just a few of your hard baits to go over there with you guys. You can try them out along the way, but learn those other presentations we were talking about first and get back to me. I'm Nick the Informative Fisherman, and that's an introduction to bass fishing, guys. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Let's roll. Hang on, guys.